Hey friend, this is your friend from Motivation Mastery Mind. Today we're going to discuss the danger of not correcting bad habits or not pursuing good habits and goals. Listen closely. These things are very important and the story I share is very powerful. I was recently reminded of a story told by Samuel Whitman. In this account, he acquaints us with a story that began when he was just a boy. Once on his family's homestead there was an old sawmill. The sawmill had left the valley in which they lived, but it left behind many pieces of equipment. One day as Samuel was exploring the property, he came across a faller's wedge. A faller's wedge is used to help fell a tree. It's inserted in a cut after it's made by a saw, then struck with a sledgehammer to widen the gap and make it fall. Samuel happened to be late for dinner, so he put the feller's wedge in the fork of a young walnut tree that his father had planted. He figured he would take it to the shed after dinner, or perhaps the next time he walked by. Unfortunately, this merely became a good intention, and we'll see the result. The fellow's wedge was never moved, and it eventually grew into the tree. By the time he was married, it was firm in the grip of the limbs, and by the time he had his grandchildren, it was completely healed over. Many years later, when Samuel was now the owner of the homestead, a fierce winter storm came across the valley. Typically, this storm would not have done any damage to a large, beautiful walnut tree. But to Samuel's dismay, he went out that night to find out that one of the three major limbs had split away from the trunk, and it crashed to the ground. This so imbalanced the remainder of the top that it too split apart and went down. The next morning, Samuel went out to mourn the loss of his tree that his father had planted. What he found magnified his loss. In the clear morning hours, he saw it was the faller's wedge. The wedge had grown into the tree and had prevented the tree's fibers from growing together completely, leaving the tree weak and vulnerable. There are two valuable lessons we can learn from this. First, what we put off today may have serious consequences in the future. And secondly, forgotten wedges may seem to heal, but they can also be fatal. We can have good intentions to possibly kick a bad habit. We can have good intentions to knock off that flirting with that nice girl in the office because it's going nowhere. Or perhaps we know exactly where it's going, but we deny we get caught. Good intentions may mean we get help for a drug or alcohol addiction, that your self-motivation alone is just not enough. You know in your heart that you really need help to have a fighting chance for recovery. Good intentions may know that you need to improve your communication to better connect with a loved one, or that you just need to stop working so much and spend time with them before it's too late. What about forgotten wedges of things that may have happened to you in your youth that you've never talked with anyone about? There are a myriad of things, so many things that we can talk about. The great news is that this thinking that has gotten us in trouble can be changed. We're adapted for change. There's hope. The list can go on and on and on of the problems. But before the storm hits, take stock, look at your intentions, and extract any forgotten wedges before it's too late. Act now. And if you do, remember the wedge in the tree and the time that had passed. And remember the damage that eventually happened. And remember that if the young boy had just reached up and taken the wedge out, that the story may be very different. There's hope no matter where you are in your story. There's power in change. There's power in action. I know these are good, solid principles, and if you follow them, we'll see you at the top.